Hey, William Gilmore here for the ScreenwritersJourney.com. It is day 238 and submissions away. I sent off my horror screenplay, The Calling, to both Chad Hayes and Daniela Garcia Breck at Circle of Confusion. And I spent the last probably 3 days since I got back just hunkered over the computer, going over the script, reviewing it, checking it for every possible correction I can make in it. I did take some time to do some research on The Conjuring, which Chad Hayes wrote with his brother Carrie, which was 2013's big horror film. And they got The Conjuring 2 coming out. I found two versions of that screenplay online. One is very, very close to the finished product, and one is an early draft. The early draft has some issues, and I see why they made their changes. So it's good to see that even the professionals are constantly reworking their work. The final version is a little different in its pacing than my screenplay is. They do some interesting things with their formatting also, with underlining and using caps for certain sequences, which is a no-no for the new writer who's submitting spec scripts. They can get by with that, I guess, because they had a big hit. The pacing in The Conjuring is a little different also from The Calling. I think my story holds up well compared to theirs. It is a basic story, but there's definitely a pacing difference. Theirs is a lot slower, more of a slow build in the tension, little creepy things happening here and there, building up and building up and building up. Whereas The Calling has more of an action element to it, particularly with the B storyline of the thug who abducts Connor at gunpoint and takes him to the woods, and then there's a battle with the thug later, who we learn is Jeb Mason. So there's some action elements to mine that don't exist in their script, so that makes it a little different. And something that I did not have in my script that most horror films or horror scripts do, and it's certainly there in the Hayes Brothers script, is that opening sequence that sort of sets the tone for the piece. And I don't always need to have that as personally. And the idea is that it sets the tone for the movie, so you're going to go see a horror film. So you got to see some kind of horror element right at the top. And my feeling is, if you don't know you're going to a horror movie, why did you pick this movie? You got to kind of know. And I kind of like the idea of everything's just sort of normal and happy, and then things start happening, as opposed to we kick it right off with something. And that's what I did with The Calling. And that is sort of a no-no in the genre of horror film. And when you present that, they go, oh my gosh, that's not how you do horror. That's not the genre. You didn't follow the rules. And my feeling is that it's, it makes it a little bit different. It takes it sort of out of the realm, at least with this particular script, of being such a genre horror piece. It's still horror, it's in that genre, but it's a little bit different, but it may be different in a way that doesn't work for what people are expecting or looking for. And you do have to play to audience expectations. So I began thinking about that and going, well, how can I adjust this? What can I do? Because I really don't have any horror elements that happen until after that inciting incident, which happens around page 10 with the abduction of Connor by the thug. So how do I get horror elements into the beginning? One way is I could show something that happens later in the film, and then we flash back to the beginning. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to tease a moment later in the film, and then go back to the beginning and explain how we got to that moment. And I'm not sure that I have a really good moment to tease like that. It would probably have to be something near the climax with Connor fighting in the waterfall. And I just thought that might be too confusing because you don't understand what the spooky elements are at that point if you start with that. So what I decided to do was take the death of the young girl, Sarah Jane, at the hands of her grandfather. It's she's a bastard child, and the mother died in childbirth, and her grandfather even is sort of a farmer preacher in the mountains of Georgia in 1905. And during a baptism, when he tries to baptize his granddaughter in the waterfall, he drowns her. So I thought, well, that could be a chance to show some really cool visual elements, and it introduces our villains right at the very top, who will ultimately be our ghosts who are pursuing Connor, the little girl and the old man, Sarah Jane and Eben. And it also establishes the waterfall, something I hadn't thought of previously. When Connor gets taken to the waterfall in the existing script, the audience doesn't know that there's something bad about the waterfall. They just know he's being taken to the woods and they end up at the waterfall. And then we find out later through the story that bad things happen at the waterfall. There's bad juju there. And that's just sort of the why these things are happening. And so by establishing that waterfall up front, that something bad has happened there, when Connor is being taken through the woods to the waterfall, we know something bad is going to happen. It sort of amps up the tension. Something I hadn't thought of before, but that's what happens when you start looking at other people's scripts and how they work things and how they build that tension. So that actually turned out to be a very good idea, I think. So I added that in. It's about a page and a half, so it adds almost 2 pages in the beginning of the script. The script was about 110, which isn't too bad. Maybe a little long for a horror, but as scripts go, coming in around 110 pages is where you should be shooting for. So I was pretty good there. But I thought I should probably trim that down a little bit now, that especially that it's at 112 pages with this new scene. And that also pushes our inciting incident down a little further. So I wanted to get it back down closer to page 10. So we had the horror moment at the top with the drowning of the little girl in this pond. And it takes up 2 pages. Then I only got to go 8 pages to get to the inciting incident. And so that was my goal. And so I started going through and just trimming down scenes in that opening section and figuring how to condense things, and just went through the whole script and did that. And what I found, again, going back what I've learned from come-ups, that my action tends to be a little long. I was able to go through and actually trim out a lot of that extraneous action element and make it flow a lot faster. And I ended up bringing it down to 103 pages. So by adding the roughly 2 pages in the beginning, that would have taken me up to 112. I got it down to 103, so it's 9 pages of material that came out of that script before I sent it out. So I think that's good. I did send it out for a couple of quick reads from some trusted personal readers, and begging and pleading. I know I want to send this out tomorrow, so I need you to read it tonight. Can you do that? And they very, very graciously did so. And the reports that came back were very good. They seemed to like it. Seems to flow very quickly. It's a very fast read, which is good. And again, it's one of those things that once the action starts on page 10, with the inciting incident of the abduction is all very exciting. There's the robbery at the store, going to the woods, the fight in the woods, Connor showing up at the house. Things slow down just a little bit. And it starts to go back into that slow tension build like the Hayes brothers had in The Conjuring, where we just get, Connor has a spontaneous bleed. Well, what's going on with that? Don't know. Everything seems fine. Then he sees the little girl. Then he sees the little girl and the old man. And then things just keep ramping up. And each thing gets a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. First, they're sort of visions for Connor. And then they start manifesting into reality and start making physical contact with him. So it's a little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit. And it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger all the way through. And so once we hit that opening, that inciting incident, it pretty much just keeps ramping all the way to the end. And I feel pretty good about it. My one hiccup that I may have, well, 2 things. It may still take too long to get to that inciting incident. Because of the horror genre, we may want to jump right into, once we establish that waterfall is bad and horrible things have happened there, we're going to want to see what happens. It may be too much character building and world building in that 8 pages before we get there. I do have a correction for that. I can lose some of that. I really like it. I think there's some good writing in there. There's great character moments between Connor and Dara that really make us care for them. But it's an easy fix to condense that and jump right into the abduction. But we lose some of the character moments. I kind of like those, so I'm leaving them there for the moment. The other big issue is at the end. I sort of have a Deus Ex Machina ending, this sort of time shift jump that saves Connor and allows him to come back to life because he's dead. And it also saves the sheriff. And I did that for the big reason I did it was if I leave the sheriff dead at the end when Connor is saved at the waterfall and is basically brought back to life, he's got some explaining to do because there's a dead sheriff in his house. He disappeared from the hospital. They don't know how he got. I mean, there's all kinds of issues that start coming up that people start questioning. Oh, you know, there's a dead guy in the pond at the waterfall that you had an incident with last night, and there's a dead police officer in your house, and you're running around with these head wounds. So it created a lot of questions at the end of the script, so I needed a way to sort of reset everything and take it back to the beginning. And so I used a time jump element to rectify all that. And I think it's explained fairly well, but both my readers questioned it. They kind of got that that's what happened, but why? And why was it necessary? And so that may be a little confusing. I think it leads good questions for the audience, however. Did all this really happen, or was it just something in Connor's mind? Was his life literally flashing before his eyes as he thought he was dying at the waterfall, and this was his way of dealing with it? Or did these things actually happen, and was there a time jump? So there's, you can look at it from that way, and that it's a good, open ending, although I do sort of close that open ending in one of the final scenes to say, yes, this all did happen. So that could be a hiccup. But if they make it all the way to that point and they're with it, hopefully that they'll stay with it. And maybe I'll have to make a change in it. Maybe I won't. Maybe they'll hate the whole thing, and I'll never hear from them. I don't know. The script is off. It's out of my hands at this point. I think it's a good, solid story. And it's been optioned once previously. The financing did not come through for it, so the rights reverted back to me, and we're trying to make a go of it. I think it's a stronger script now than it was when it got optioned. So, cross your fingers. Wish me luck. Hopefully we'll hear something in about 6 weeks. And that's all I have for now. I'm going to go to bed because it has been about a week and a half now of just solid work, little sleep, traveling across the country. I'm exhausted, and that's it. We will pick up again later in the week and figure out where we're going from here. Until then, I'm William Gilmore for thescreenwritersjourney.com. Please keep up your own writing. Let me know what you're up to, what you got going on, and what progress you're making. I definitely want to hear that. See you next time.